Hi all, welcome to another refurbishment video. Now I'm focusing on a part in this one rather than a complete system. It's an EVGA GT730 with 1 gig of vram, so it's nothing to write home about compared to most modern cards, but really it's an experiment to see if it can still play a lot of the less taxing free online games such as Team Fortress 2 and Fortnite. Now I've paired this up with 16 gigs of RAM, an SSD and a hard drive, and the g3258 CPU. Now that CPU is unlocked, but on the motherboard I'm using it's not overclockable, and also that CPU doesn't support 1600 megahertz RAM, so the RAM is actually running in 133 megahertz. So what I'll do is I'll start the system up and run a few graphical benchmarks and then some games and discuss the performance of this GT730 graphics card.
So after introducing the graphics card, I've put all the system together. Now just as a few side notes, you cannot actually overclock the CPU on this motherboard, so it's at stock speed, and also that CPU doesn't support any RAM speed higher than 133 megahertz. So even though I've got 1600 megahertz RAM installed, it's not going to run at 1600 megahertz. So what I'll do is I'll run graphical benchmarks first and just see what result we get. Now I'm also going to be doing the gaming benchmarks using Bandicam, so what I'll do is I'll show the set of scores for the graphical benchmarks without Bandicam recording, with Bandicam recording, so you can see what downshift we get in performance. Okay, so what I've done is I've run the two graphical benchmarks, Valley and Heaven, first of all with Bandicam recording and then with Bandicam not recording, just to see what the graphical degradation would be. Now one difference I've done with this session is between each benchmark run I've restarted the system to give completely fresh resources to the whole process. So first up, with Bandicam not recording on Valley, getting a score of 649, and with Bandicam recording score of 626. On Heaven, without Bandicam recording, score of 479, and with Bandicam recording 459. So what that translates to is not a great difference compared to other benchmarks I've done. So there's only a downshift of -4%. So I imagine there'll be a similar thing in the games. And what I'll do between each game session is restart the system. So let's load up a few games and see what performance we get. First up we have Zula. Now on this 60 not too much going on, so it's late 50s at the moment, which is just fine. So I suppose if you want better quality then just change the settings accordingly, but as I say before, on this monitor you probably won't tell that much difference really between medium and high. It's quite a good game actually. Now I've noticed there's a little bit of screen tearing, so maybe turn VSync on if needed. Right, so that's Zula. This is CSGO. Now for some reason I can't get this to record in game Bandicam game record mode, so it's on screen record mode, and that won't show the Bandicam frame rate counter. So I've got Steam's own in-game counter in the top left, but if you can't see it at the moment, we're on just above 50 frames per second. Now I've got most of the settings set on low and the resolution set a couple of notches down from the minimum, and it's it's pretty playable, put it that way. So if you're a fan of CSGO, then this machine, providing you set all the right graphical settings, you should be fine. Up next we have Paladins, and all the quality settings out. We're getting 60 frames per second, which is just what we want. So I think I better get some other players on the screen just to sort of test that out if I can. So just bear with me. It's a good looking game, this is. I think it's the same engine as Realm Royale, which is Unreal, so you can be guaranteed that it's going to look fine without compromising system resources too much. So don't forget Bandicam's recording, and when there's a firefight it goes down to like mid 40s, late 50s. So without Bandicam recording, I'm sure this will be 60 frames per second without too much difficulty. Right, so that's Paladins. Up next is Team Fortress 2. Now this is not very taxing on a system, so again I can max it out and we're getting above 60 frames per second, but on this monitor that can only display 60, that's a bit irrelevant really, but at least you know you can max it out and get 60. Bandicam's saying that sometimes it's 70, so just going outside mid 40s, which is just right. So that's Team Fortress 2. On to Fortnite. Now I've got all the graphical quality settings set on the minimum. The resolution is just one up from minimum, and I've got the frame rate capped at 30 to stop any stuttering. I suppose with any firefights you're going to start to see a degradation in performance just going outside and there's not a lot going on. It does occasionally flip down to mid 20s, so it might be playable, but as I say, once a firefight's going and more effects, the limitations of this system are going to show, but at the moment it's not too bad. So you may or may not get a decent gaming experience on this setup, so feel free to try it out, but it's a better performance than Apex Legends, put it that way. Right, so that's Fortnite. So just briefly going back to Fortnite, I did actually switch off Bandicam for a moment then, and the frame rate was a lot more stable at 30. So just take that into account. So that's Fortnite. This is Apex Legends. Now minimal resolution and any effects on off flags, for example, switched off or set to the minimal, and we're not even getting 20 frames per second, so it's up to you if you want to try it. What I'll do is I'll just switch Bandicam off and report back to see if we can get any better frame rates. No real improvement switching Bandicam off, so I'd give Apex Legends a miss on this setup because we're not even into a firefight, and that frame rate's just not good enough, unfortunately. So that's Apex Legends. Up next is Rocket League. Now in this game there are various settings at either quality or performance, so I've gone for a good balance between the two, and at the moment it's above 30, sometimes mid 30s, 40s. It doesn't seem to be stuttering too much, if at all really. I don't notice any stuttering, but if it does, just feel free to adjust some of those settings. I've also got it on the highest resolution, so that's another thing you can sort of adjust as well. And if it really stutters, then maybe cap that frame rate at 30. But at the moment, it's very, very playable and looks fine to me. So that's Rocket League. So just to recap then, on this system, CPU is a G3258, which is dual core with 2 threads. Unfortunately, the 16 gig of 1600 megahertz RAM is only supported at 133 megahertz. The graphics card is a EVGA GT730 with 1 gig of VRAM. Now this system does cope pretty well with a lot of the free online games such as Team Fortress 2 and Fortnite. It can't play Apex Legends out of all the games that I've tried, but you can almost certainly be sure that it'll play a lot of the older games as well, so maybe try those out. If you've got any questions, just drop me a comment, and if there's any games you'd like me to try out, just let me know. What I'm going to do in the next video, is I've got a CPU upgrade, which is an i5-4590. So what I'll do is I'll drop that in and just see if we can get some more performance out of this system in Apex, because that was one of the games that wouldn't really give us decent frame rates. So look out for that next video.